Hi, I'm TJ Adams.
Hi, I'm Ryan Meehan.
And hi, I'm Tristan. Today we're interviewing Grandpa Gerry Brozynski here in West Allis on May 11, 2023. Yeah. All right, so can you tell us what is your earliest memory?
Pardon?
What is your earliest memory?
Probably when I was about 4 years old, I would say. When I started kindergarten, I didn't like it. I started at St. Albert's on the south side of Milwaukee, and I think I went one day to kindergarten. That was it. I graduated.
So,
Then I lived on 19th in Burnham. It was actually Muskego and Burnham. We lived above, my grandpa had a tavern, and he had four family flats. That's where I lived. And we lived there till I was, I think, like 6 or 7. And then we moved out to the town of Greenfield, which on 68th and Finger Place. And it was 1 block out of West Allis, south of West Allis. And Finger Place was only 1 street long, 1 block. And 6734 West Finger Place. I can still remember that address. And it was a beautiful place to be brought up because there was a lot of wooded areas. There weren't too many homes around there. And we had a lot of freedom. We lived 1 block out of West Allis, and there was a beautiful ball fields over there. And I spent most of my time playing baseball. We probably played baseball 10 months out of the year. We didn't know about basketball, and football was something new, but we had a lot of fun. And I remember playing over there, and when it was time to come home for supper, my dad I talked about the dog, would send the dog after us. The dog would come after us, and we knew we had to go home because the dog went to fetch us for supper. That was kind of neat. We did have 1 neighbor that lived next door to us, and he raised chickens, and now I know where that phrase comes from, a chicken running around without a head. That's how they kill a chicken. They cut the head off, and then the chickens run around till they bleed to death and fall off. He also raised a pig, and I remember one time that pig got loose and was running down 68th Street, and everybody was chasing after him to try and find it, try and catch him. It was pretty neat. A lot of, like I said, a lot of open fields. My older brother was, we both went to St. Rita's grade school, and that was on 60th in Lincoln, so we had quite a ways to walk. It was about a mile, and we used to walk to school, and can you believe it? We'd come home for lunch, walk another mile to come home for lunch. But that was a very nice school, very big school at that time. I think it was one of the biggest schools in the state. We had 4 classrooms of every grade. I remember it was over, in 2nd grade I had over 100 students, which was pretty big. We only had a basement church, which got very crowded. That's where I received my first Holy Communion in 2nd grade. Monsignor Arnold. There was a lot of stories about St. Rita's. When they started up as a parish, in 1929, they only had a tent for a church. And they rented the tent from State Fair Park. And that's where you have their masses, in the tent. And then eventually, as time went on, we got a new church, and we had nuns that taught us, very good nuns, and they came away from 27th and Greenfield, and they had to drive on this public bus every day to get to the school to teach us. So that was pretty neat. That's about, I just remember some of the snowstorms we had. In 1947, we had a really big storm. I think we had like 3 or 4 feet of snow. And I remember my dad worked on the south side of Milwaukee, and he couldn't drive a car or anything, so he had to actually walk like about 12 miles to get home. That was pretty rough.
In the snowstorm.
I remember waking up in the morning, and I heard something on a roof. Actually, the kids next door were walking on our roof because the snow was drifted up from the ground to the roof. It was that high of a bank. And I remember we had to shovel all that snow off the house because we were getting cold. Houses were heated with coal. So we had to shovel out so we could get a coal truck to deliver coal. That was kind of neat. And then my sister, I had one sister, and she was born at that house on Finger Place in 1942. And I remember we were home when the doctor delivered the baby. So that was kind of a neat thing to see. To have your sister born in the house where you are, that was pretty nice.
So why did your family move to Milwaukee?
Well, my dad was brought up in a tavern, and my mother thought he should go into the tavern business. So that's what he did. He quit his job. He had a good job at West Allis. He quit the job, and we moved 13th and Beecher. That's where the tavern was. That was in 1947, the summer of 1947. That was quite an experience, too. That was right after the war, and all that soldiers coming back from the war, they were good customers. And it was unreal what the prices were. You could get a glass of beer, a 7-ounce glass of beer, for a nickel, 5 cents. If you bought a shorty of beer, it was 10 cents. A big bottle of beer was 15 cents. You could go out for the whole night for $1 and have a good time. If you wanted a shot of brandy, it was 25 cents. A shot of whiskey was 20 cents. It was unreal. I wish they had the prices now.
How busy was the tavern?
It was pretty busy. There was a lot of history with that tavern. It was over 100 years old when my dad bought it. There was a famous dancer by the name of Gilda Gray, and she actually danced in that tavern. But that was some of the old timers that lived around there used to tell us about that. So that was kind of neat.
Were there any regular patrons that you became familiar with?
It was all a neighborhood trade. So the people that came there mostly lived in the area. They didn't have to drive, they could just walk there. there was a lot of taverns. I think within a block of where our tavern was, there was 4 or 5 other ones. It was unreal.
What high school did you end up going to?
One of the best. Don Bosco.
Mm.
It's not there anymore. It merged. It's now Thomas More. But it was an old public school, and it was condemned. And the brothers and Mary bought it, and they reconditioned it and refurbished it, and that's where I went to school. I had a long way to go to school. Right across the alley. There was 2 bells that rang in the morning. The first bell and the second bell was 5 minutes later. So I would wait for the first bell to ring, then I would go to school. It was very, very convenient for me. It was a very, we were taught by brothers of Mary. They were like nuns, but they were male, and very, very strict. They were very strict. I had a brother that was in the Second World War. He was in a German concentration camp for a couple of years, so he was pretty strict. That was the only year I made the honor roll. I was afraid to do anything wrong. Yeah, I went 4 years there. I played, very lucky, I played baseball 4 years, football 4 years, and basketball 4 years. I was very fortunate. As a sophomore, I was a starter on the baseball team. I won 3 major letters in baseball. I won 2 major letters in football. My junior and senior year, we won the co-championship as my junior year and the outright my senior year. It was fun. Yeah, my junior year we won, we were co-champs with Racine St. Catherine's, and we beat them 37-7, and we had to be co-champs. My senior year, the first time ever, we beat Marquette High School, 12-0, and that we won it outright, the championship. Anyway, we won. I was on 6 championship teams at Don Bosco High School. That's very few ever do that. Thomas Moore is celebrating our years at Don Bosco, and they got a wall of fame, and I'm on there 6 times with my championship teams. I won 7 major letters in athletics, plus 3 in band. I had a very good life at Don Bosco. And I should have mentioned this, when I was in 8th grade, Don Bosco built a new gym. It was one of the best in the city of Milwaukee. And I knew the brothers pretty good. And they said, Gerry, anytime you want to go in the gym and shoot buckets. They showed me how to get into the gym, and they said there's always be a ball on the stage for you. So I'd be in that brand new gym all by myself, shooting buckets. It was great. So then I used to play basketball with the teachers, the brothers. It was good raising up. So that's about it for my high school. Oh, I did win 1 championship in basketball also. Since you guys are basketball players, I don't want to forget that.
Were there any strong rivalries with any other school?
Pardon?
Were there any rivalries with any other school?
Marquette was our biggest rivalry. Yeah. When we beat them 12-0 in football, that was great. But we were very new school. We were, my senior year, that was only the 10th year that the school was in existence. So it wasn't very, And we had, the teams that were in our conference was Waukesha Memorial, Pius, Marquette, Mesmer, St. John's Cathedral, Notre Dame, St. Catherine's. They're all good. I think I should, my own recollection, we were in a Catholic conference, and that was the strongest conference in the city. We played our football games on Sunday afternoon, so we rivaled the Packers. But we always had good crowds, so that was fun.
Did the crowds ever get rowdy?
No, we didn't never had that problem. So we actually played Sunday afternoon, which I thought was a good time, So there was never any rivalries, rowdiness there,
Out of all your high school sports memories and experiences, what was your favorite that sticks out the most to you?
My favorite sport was baseball. I played a lot of baseball. I played, in high school, we played like 25 games. And then I actually played semi-pro baseball too. It was a county classic and a county industrial league. And we played probably like 30 or 40 games. So I had probably 60 or 70 games I played. But I really loved baseball. Bob Euchre, the broadcaster for the Brewers, he actually played in that league before he turned pro. Had a lot of pro players. Kenny Keltner, the third baseman that stopped Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak with a good fielding play. He played in that league. Ernie Johnson. It was fun. It was fun.
So you mentioned you also played band. Could you tell us what instrument you played?
I played clarinet and then actually a saxophone. And I played in Don Bosco band for 3 years. And then I had my own band that we played at a lot of parties and weddings. And the weddings were really fun to play at because everybody goes to a wedding with the idea of having fun. So that was nice. That was fun. We started out, we got $15 a person for 4 hours. And when I ended up, we ended up with like $50 an hour. I mean, a night. So we weren't, I think that's the trouble with bands nowadays. They price themselves out of business, charging too much. So.
How many people were in your band?
Just usually 3 and sometimes 4. If we needed a guitar player, we'd get a guitar. My brother played the accordion, I played sax and clarinet, and then we had a drummer. And that was about it.
And when you played for the school, how many people were in that band?
Oh, it wasn't that big yet, but I would say probably 50. We didn't do any marching like they do nowadays, But it was fun. Learned a lot.
After school or on the weekends, what were some hot spots you'd go to hang out with your friends?
Oh, they used to have sweet shops, ice cream parlors, and that's where we usually would hang out, Like a tavern, but it was ice cream.
So how much did an ice cream cone cost?
I think a nickel. A double scooper would be 10 cents. It was, we had one place, Stadium Sweet Shop, they had what they called a walking sundae. It was a ice cream cone, kind of rectangular, and they would make a sundae. You could have a walking sundae. That was very good. There was also a Kaszubes Park, which had a nice swimming pool. So we swam a lot. It was only a couple blocks away from my house.
Did you have to pay to get into the swimming pool?
I'm not sure. If it was very minimal, you know. But I can't really remember. I don't think so. I don't think so. It was run by the county.
So how did you get around? Did you walk or did...
You know, we walked all over. And you never were afraid to walk any place. You never had any problems. I used to walk from 13th and Beecher to downtown in Wisconsin Avenue, across the viaduct. Never a problem. Now you're afraid to walk 2 blocks.
And so, when did you start driving?
Pardon?
When did you learn how to drive?
When I was 16. Then I drove all over.
Do you remember what your first car was?
The first car?
Mm-hmm.
It was a 41 Plymouth. A 1941 Plymouth. My dad's car.
When did you get your first job?
When I was in high school, I worked one Christmas for the post office, delivering mail. That was only a week or 2. My first full-time job was at the Ladish Company in Cudahy, Wisconsin. It's a big Ford shop. Now it's probably the biggest Ford shop in the world, really. Yeah, I was right out of high school, and that's funny because that's the only job I ever had. I lasted there 39 years.
How much did you get paid there?
It was unreal. When I started off, it was like $1.32 an hour. An hour. And within 6 months, I was up to $1.85 an hour. And I thought, when I can make $2 an hour, I'll be rich, because that was a lot of money then, $2. You know.
So, what did you do at your job?
Well, I used to write orders up for cutting the steel, and that's what I did. And then I moved to the shipping department, and I would type out the bill of ladings and everything with shipping. And then I went into service, and when I got out of service, I ended up in the dye room, and that was very good. That's where they make all the dyes for the forgings, and they got very skilled workers. It takes 8 years to get an apprenticeship as a dye sinker. And then I worked there, and I became a supervisor, and 39 years later I was retired.
Did the job offer any health benefits or any pension plan?
We had the best health benefits. I had a son that was very sick. He was in a hospital at Deaconess in Milwaukee for 30 days. He ended up in Madison for 2 weeks. He had a cancer on his kidney. In Madison, they took very good care of him. They removed his kidney, and he's living 57 years with 1 kidney. He's still doing good. Our health insurance was tremendous. I didn't pay a penny for my health insurance. When my son was in the hospital at Deaconess in Madison, I didn't even get a bill. The company covered everything. We had health insurance, dental insurance. It was unreal.
So I'd like to go back, if you don't mind, to your home life while you were in high school. Could you describe your house? What did it smell like? What do you remember seeing?
Well, we lived in a tavern. There was a lot of smoke, because everybody seemed to smoke then. And you get up in the morning, you look across the tavern, you could hardly see across, there was so much smoke. I'm surprised I never got sick for that second of smoke. Yeah, that was, it was a neat life. I don't know how I slept sometime, because right above my bedroom, right below my bedroom was a tavern with the jukebox. That jukebox, especially on the weekends, oh my God. It was so loud, it was unreal. And then we lived a block away from Johnston Emergency Hospital, and there was all the sirens, ambulances going by. It was unreal. Maybe that's why I'm tired now.
So, at the tavern, did you guys serve any foods, or was it just strictly drinks?
Pardon?
Did you guys serve any food at the tavern?
My mother, at one time, she had fish fries on Friday, chicken fries on Saturday. Chicken fries was a big thing years ago, just like fish fries are now. Then every once in a while we'd have special dinners. Spanferkel, I don't know if you know what that is. It's a pig, and it's really good. You roast the pig, and you have it with the wet potatoes, sauerkraut, gravy, mushrooms. That was a very big meal. And then also Cornish hens. That's like a small chicken. That was very good, very good. And you get a lot of customers that would come for that.
When you were in high school, did you have a favorite class or a favorite teacher that you remember?
I had one I didn't like too much. Brother Roy Mayer. Tell you a story about him. My mother was supposed to come. Oh, I missed school one day. And I got my report card a couple of weeks later, and I got a 68 on my report card. It was in English. So my mother had to go to school and talk to the teacher. And he said the reason I got a 68 is because I missed school.
I'm sorry.
So in English I got a 68. My mother had to come to school and talk to the teacher. And he said because I missed one day of school and I didn't ask what I had to make up, he gave me a 68. So because of that, this was during the basketball season, I could practice basketball. I was on a JV then, sophomore. I could practice, but I couldn't play in the games for 2 weeks. A couple of months later, when I got my new report card, I got a 98. Now I didn't need a 98, and I didn't need a 68. But just to make up the difference, he put my mark real high. Then that teacher got transferred to Peru, I guess. But the teachers were really fair. But one thing they did, if you goofed up, they didn't waste any time by picking you up and throwing you out of the classroom. If you didn't like it, they'd get rid of you. We only had 650 kids at that school, at Don Bosco, and they had a waiting list. I signed up in 5th grade for that school. So you never talk back to the teachers. Well, I got to tell you one story. this is kind of interesting. I mentioned before we had a dog. And I had a younger brother that was 12 years younger than me. And he used to walk around the school, because we lived right across the alley, with the dog. So every once in a while, the teachers would bring my brother Skip into the classrooms with the dog. I remember my brother once we had a retreat. He was in confession, and after confession, he went back to his classroom, and here's my brother Skip sit with the dog at his desk. That was very funny. My brother Skip everybody knew him. The gym teacher knew him, Mr. Region. He had him running a gym class one time. It was kind of neat. It was really a close family school.
So, in the tavern, did you and your brother share a room?
Pardon?
Did you and your brother share a room?
Yes, we did. One bedroom, yeah. Very small bedroom.
Did you guys share a bed too, or?
Yeah, we couldn't get another bed in there.
So, what were some of the things your family did for fun?
Well, we bowled a lot. My dad sponsored bowling teams. Like I say, I played a lot of baseball. My grandpa, Brozynski, had a place out at Tishigan Lake that we would go out there a lot. Fishing. He lived right on the lake. So we fished a lot and swam a lot. That was a lot of fun.
And did your family get to go on any trips? To
Not really.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, at Tavern Business, you didn't have any time to yourself. You know, you were always working. You know.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a time I came home from a date or out with the boys where I didn't come home and have to fill up the beer coolers or the soda coolers. There was always something to do. Then I had a 10-bar lot. Sometimes it was fun. If you were crowded, if you had a party, it was a lot of fun. But it was a lot of work.
I know you said you worked at the same place for 30 plus years, but did you ever go to college?
I went to some colleges, yes. I went to MRI, was a management school. I went a little bit to MSOE. And then they'd come to Ladish and have classes for us right there. So I did get a good education while I was working.
How did you pay for college?
Pardon?
How did you pay for college? How did you pay for college?
I don't understand the question.
So how did you pay for your college classes?
Oh, Ladish paid for them. I didn't have to pay for them.
I'm sorry, but could you tell us what Ladish is?
Pardon?
Could you tell us what Ladish is?
Ladish is the big Ford shop. They had one of the biggest drop forges in the world. They got it from Germany after the Second World War. And it was down in the ground, 150 feet in the ground, and way above the roof. And it was a counter blow hammer. In other words, the bottom came up and the top came down, and it was unbelievable. If you had to walk past it when that happened, when it struck, it would scare the hell out of you. It was, I forget what the tonnage was, but it was, and the shrapnel, not the shrapnel, but it like shrapnel, from the steel, it would fly, and I remember driving by one time, I got caught on my coat, I started on fire. It was a good trade. We did a lot of airplane jet engines. There wasn't a plane flying in the country or in the world that didn't have a Ladish part. And then we got into the missile business, and we made a lot of the outside liners for the missiles, plus part of the engines. We could, we had a ring roll. They would take a block of steel and flatten it out. Then they would push a hole in it, and then they would roll it on a ring roll. And this ring roll would roll that ring out to 20 feet diameter. 20 feet diameter by probably 20 feet high. And that was used for the outside of the rockets. So that was very interesting. They had a separate building for that.
Was that was the production of these missiles kept secret?
No, it wasn't secret. No,
Yeah.
no. We had a lot of inspectors. Oh, well, that's especially for these jet engines. They had to be inspected so many times. It was unreal. And the heat treating, they had to be heat treated to a certain degree. When they were forging that steel, it was like 2,000 degrees. It was really hot. And then everything had to be heat treated, and there was a lot of processing going on.
Did anybody get hurt on the job?
Yes, every once in a while. They were pretty safe-minded, but every once in a while people did. Especially years ago, before I started there was a lot of people that lost fingers and even hands, and it was dangerous. But after a while, they were pretty safe.
So the people who did get hurt, did they get any financial aid or?
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
When your coat caught on fire, could you tell us what happened?
It just burned the coat, a little hole in it, and we made it out right away.
Yeah.
But my job at Ladish was in a dye room. I was like the production manager in a dye room. I did all the scheduling, and like for 300 people. And we had production meetings a couple times a day, 8:30 in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was very interesting. It was a very stressful job, but I liked it. I liked, you're always doing something, you know. So I did a lot of subcontracting. If our dye room was too busy, I subcontract to work to other machine shops. And I had one that was about half a mile away from our company. And they were like a Ladish part of us. And Mosig too, they did a lot of work for us. And I remember one time I had one of these big rings, and our machines were too busy, so I was trying to get this work done at another company. So there was a company in Brookfield, a machine shop, and they said they could do the work for us. So I sent it to them. He called me up. He said, I can't handle it. He could handle the size, but he couldn't handle the weight. The machine wouldn't turn. It was too heavy. So I had to get it back. But that was interesting. Yeah, we had a lot of places we sent work to.
So would you say you were close with your coworkers? Did you guys have parties? Did you guys go out often?
They didn't. Most of the parties were done by the workers. The company didn't sponsor too much of that. The company didn't sponsor too much as far as parties and that. But when I retired, they had a party for me and a couple other guys that retired. We probably had 100 people at that party. That was very nice.
Were you a part of any work unions?
At one time I was, but I was in management. I was on salary.
Kind of shifting gears here. How did the Korean War affect your life?
It affected our work. We made a lot of more bomb shells. We did a lot of that for the Army and Navy. At one time during the war, Ladish was actually controlled by the government because they told you what to do and you had to do it. So, that was the same with the Korean War or the Vietnam War.
Did those wars affect anyone that you knew, any of your friends, anyone in your neighborhood?
I had an uncle, I didn't even know he was killed in training during the First World War, really. I had a nephew, my godson, was in the FBI, and he was in Afghanistan, and he was on the search and recovery team. He was on 6 missions as an FBI, never got hurt, never got wounded, nothing. He came back to the States, and in Virginia, outside of Washington, he was in training. He got shot and killed in training. 38 years old. He was a supervisor in the FBI. That was terrible. We had a big funeral for him here at St. John Vianney Church. And there had to be 200 FBI agents at that funeral. It was beautiful. But it's a shame that a boy got killed in training, you know. Now once a year now, they have a ceremony at the cemetery he's buried at. The FBI comes and they run a ceremony for him, and I think it's really great to remember him. He could have got buried at Arlington National Cemetery, but they wanted to keep him here in Milwaukee. So that's where he is, at St. Albert's.
So during the wars, did you know anyone who was drafted?
Everybody was drafted. But I wasn't drafted, but I enlisted in the reserves, though. I actually spent 6 years altogether in the Army. That was a nice experience. After basic training, we went to school. We learned what we were supposed to do. And let's see, now what was I? Oh, we used to go to meetings once a week, and we would recruit these men, and we would give them their, what they call it when they got enlisted. And one of the people I used to fingerprint. That was my job. I was a sergeant, but my job was to fingerprint him. And one of the guys I interviewed was Ray Nitschke. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was a linebacker with the Green Bay Packers. And he was the best linebacker in the first 50 years of professional football. When I grabbed his hand, it was like two of my hands. And then we had a half hour before we swore him in, and I could talk to him and interview him, and that was very interesting. That was one of the most interesting people I interviewed.
Do you remember what he said to you during that interview?
I asked him questions, where he went to school. He went to Illinois. What his subject was horticulture, study of flowers and plants. But he was an All-American, nicest guy in the world. But oh my God, was he big.
So, how did the war affect the neighborhood? Was there rationing or anything of that
Well, the
sort?
neighborhood I came from, when we had the tavern, they were mostly older. But like my older brother got drafted. He got drafted during the Korean War. He got sent to Germany during the Korean War. And he was a very good athlete too. And he spent 18 months in Germany in special services. He played baseball and football. And he traveled all over Europe. Plays. The Army is very big on sports. If you're good at it, they'll take care of you. His football coach was an All-American from Notre Dame that was playing with the San Francisco 49ers, Bob Tunniff. He played baseball with a lot of Braves players and Yankee players. He was a catcher and a running back in football. Very good athlete.
So did you ever get to see General MacArthur, or did you get a...
I see General MacArthur on his final speech when he was fired by Truman, President Truman, and I'll never forget his famous words. Old soldiers never die, they just fade away. And he came to Milwaukee. He had crowds that were unreal. He was a good man, a good soldier. Too bad it would happen to him, but I think the reason he was relieved of his duty because he wanted to keep going on and never stop.
So you said you saw him on TV, right? For his
Yes.
final speech. Could you tell us about your family's TV? Like, was it black and white? Was it colored?
TVs were funny. I had an uncle that got the first TV in our family. You know how big it was? The screen was 7.5 inches. That was it. And then my dad got one in the tavern. I think it was 12 inches. And that was a big TV, 12 inches. Now I got one in my family room that's 60 inches.
When did you eventually meet your spouse? Do you remember when and where you met her?
Pardon?
When did you meet your wife?
After a basketball game, well, years ago, CYOs, churches, used to have dances. They call them CYO dances. And they had a band and you would dance. So anyway, after a basketball game, I got to this CYO dance at St. Augustine's. It's on Howell and just south of Lincoln, on the south of the border. And I got there and the music was almost done. So one of Mary's friends introduced me to dance with her. So I danced with her, which was a polka. I couldn't dance anyway. So I danced with her once, and then all of a sudden she left. She took the bus home. That was it. And then a couple of weeks later, she called me up. She asked me to take her to her prom. She went to Mercy High School, and their prom was always between Christmas and New Year's. So she said, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I would like you to ask you to our prom. So I said, sure. I said, I'll get together with you before that, you know. I said, I'll call you, we'll go out or something. Well, I went to the prom with her, but I never called her before that. So when I went to pick her up, she didn't know if I was going to bring her flowers, or so her mother had a set of plastic flowers that she put on her dress just in case I didn't bring any. But I did bring them, and she was a junior, I was a senior, and God, that was like 1950, 53 or 54, and we've been going together ever since.
How long were you guys together before you ended up getting married?
Oh, about three or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. What do you remember from that wedding day? Was there any, I mean, obviously besides getting married, was there something that really stuck out to you from that wedding day?
Yeah, we had a beautiful wedding. It was downtown on Wisconsin Avenue. It was the Elks Club. And we had a big wedding. And because of the size hall, we had to get a 5-piece band. So I got a really good band. They worked at Ellen Bradley, and Ellen Bradley used to have their own musical groups, singers and musicians, and they were professional. They were really good. So it was a real hot day, and I remember that was in an air-conditioned hall, and my dad supplied the booze, and everybody, when they came in, we gave them a bottle of brandy, a bottle of whiskey, or whatever they wanted. And they couldn't get a second bottle, as they brought the empty back. But the music was great. I remember the drummer for the band was mixing drinks right on his drum. They kept on playing. Obi Jorgensen was his name. Yeah, it was good. And we didn't really go on a honeymoon because I was in the Army Reserves, and a week later I had to go 2-week summer camp. So that was kind of screwed up our honeymoon. And my wife, we had our first child, I think, 9 or 10 months after we were married. I think she got pregnant on her wedding night. And then my first year, we brought home my son from the hospital on my daughter's birthday, first birthday. So we had 2 kids within a little over a year, or 2 years. And then, yeah, but we had a beautiful wedding. My grandparents were there, and Monsignor Kaiser. We got married on St. Anthony's. It was on 9th and Mitchell. It was a German nationality church, and Monsignor Kaiser was pretty strict. He was very strict. But we had a nice wedding, a big wedding, and it was nice.
How much did it cost to set the wedding up?
You know, I really can't tell you because my wife's folks paid for the food, my dad paid for the music and the liquor. So I really don't know, but I'm sure it was nothing like it is now.
Yeah. So can you tell us how it was growing, supporting a family? Can you tell us, like, some of the troubles you had?
The troubles?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have too much trouble. We were pretty well organized family. We were close, very close.
What was your first home with your family?
My first home?
Yep, your first home.
That was the one that I mentioned in the town of Greenfield.
Yeah.
The Figure Place. That was our first home. I remember when we bought it, there was no running water. We had an outhouse. So we had to go next door to the neighbors to get water from their well. And we had all the fixtures in the house, the toilet and everything, but there was no running water. So my dad, who was pretty handy with plumbing, he dug our own well. And it was funny the way he dug it. In the basement, underneath the basement steps, you know what a post hole digger is? It's, well, you take it, you jam it in the ground and you spread it. Well, what he did, he'd go down so far, then he'd have to put extensions on the post hole digger, because we had to go down like 30 feet to get water. So we did that, we got water. I remember taking the first bath in the bathtub, and when we drained the water out, it was all sand at the bottom. It was all sand, like a sandy beach. But then we had a lot of water. It was very good. The house was, I wish we never would have moved to the tavern. We had a beautiful house. My brother and I had our own bedroom up in the attic, a big bedroom. And everything we needed, we had there.
Did your well, did it have hot water too?
Oh, yes. Yeah, my dad put the hot water heater in. Yeah. And then, after a while, there was a cleaners about 2 blocks away, a dry cleaners.
Mm-hmm.
It had an explosion. I don't know what exploded, but ever after that we had more water than we needed. It must have loosened up the well or something. Oh.
So you talked about having a family. When did you know you were ready to have a family?
Well, I didn't know. It just happened. But I tell you one thing. Then 2 years after we had our children, we moved to West Allis, 82nd and Beecher. I bought a house. That was funny because my older brother bought a house 2 years before me, and I had to borrow him money for a down payment. Then when it came for me to get a down payment, he didn't have the money, so I had to go get money from relatives. But I lived there 23 years. It was a nice house. And then we went, my children all went to St. Rita's grade school. And it was funny, I lived way in West Allis, and I worked way in Cudahy. Instead of buying a house in Cudahy, but I liked it. And West Allis was the place to live years ago. They had Ellis Chalmers there, was one of the big manufacturing companies. They employed 17,000 people in West Allis. So they took care of all our taxes, really. My taxes were $247 a year. That was unreal. Now they're $6,600 a year.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit how you raised your children? You know, were you strict with them? Were there any rules you had with them?
Well, I was very close with them. Like I said, I coached basketball and baseball for 15 years. at St. Rita's. So I wasn't too strict, I don't think, but I never had a problem with them. You know, never had a problem. We were like after supper. I had a basketball court in my backyard. I built a garage, and the first thing I did is put a hoop on there. And we'd play basketball or football. I had a long driveway though. It was nice. So I can't say we ever had a problem. Disciplining them or anything.
How much did your house cost?
$13,000.
Really?
Now I'm going to tell you something. Okay, I put a garage in, a driveway in, aluminum siding, a rec room, a remodeled kitchen. When I sold it for $78,000. That house was just sold within a year. What do you think they got for the house?
100,000?
$251,000.
Oh my
The
gosh!
same house. I had all the improvements of that, but unreal.
So you talked about you worked in Cudahy, but you moved here to West Allis. Why West Allis?
I always liked West Allis because I lived close when I was growing up on Finger Place. That was close by. So I always liked West Allis. And plus, the taxes were so cheap, you know. My house payment was $70 a month. And that included my insurance and my taxes. $70 a month. Now it's $70 a day.
Kind of going back to your kids, how did your kids get to school? Would you walk with them, drive with them?
When they went to St. Rita's, my brother that lived, I mentioned he bought a house before me, he would drive them. He worked for the telephone company, and he would drive them. And then probably pick them up, or they got a ride home too. Because we was like 3 miles from school. That was a long way.
And then how much did it cost to send your kids to school?
You know, I'm not sure, but I know when I went to grade school at St. Hyson's in Milwaukee, it was $5 a year. And I'm sure St. Rita's wasn't too much more than that. I can't really remember what it was. But now you're talking 10, 12,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So did you notice any changes in your neighborhood?
This neighborhood,
Yeah, in West Allis.
right here now, most of the old timers are gone. It's newer people moving in. But other than that, I got my neighbor next door. He's probably been here 20 years, and the guy across the street about 20. But mostly it's, you don't know the neighbors like you used to. You don't get together with them, you know.
So we're kind of curious. Did anyone you know experience layoffs during like work-related layoffs?
I remember one time when I was in the union before I went in management. One of the Ladish had 9 labor unions, 9 of them, and one of them went on strike, and I was out of work for a while because, not that I was on strike, but the company was shut down, you know. But that was about it. Other than that, I always worked.
So what resources did these unions give to their workers?
What resources?
Yeah. So how did the unions help the workers?
Well, I guess they got more money. They raised their rate of pay, and there was some benefits that they got, vacation time and, pensions, and that's about it,
Yeah. We're curious. How was your daily life? Like, how much did food cost?
Cruise?
Food. How much?
Food.
Yeah.
Oh, that was unreal. You could get a sirloin steak for 69 cents a pound. Unreal. The food was, I should have mentioned this, when I lived on Finger Place, we had a lot of people deliver to us. There was an Omar man, delivered bakery. We had a milkman, delivered milk and eggs. There was a lot of deliveries then. It was a nice time to be brought up.
How much did the gas cost back then?
Oh, that was unreal. We used to get gas, 5 gallons for $1.
Jeez.
20 cents a gallon. I remember when it went up to 50 cents, I got ticked off. 50 cents a gallon.
Did most of the people have cars, or did people walk more?
People did walk a lot. My father had a car, because he was a long way from work. He worked at Ron Jones Island in Milwaukee. I don't know if you know where Jones Island is.
Yeah.
My dad was very handy with cars. He would overhaul his own car every couple of years, take it completely apart. Of course, cars were easy to fix then, Now you look at the hood and, oh my God, you don't know what's even in there.
So, could you say again who worked at Jones Island?
Fishermen. They call them Kaszubes. They were a breed all by themselves. They were pretty neat people. Lake Michigan was a good place to fish years ago. If the wind was blowing right, you could catch all the perch you wanted. Lake perch are very good.
Did you ever get to go into these Kaszube villages, or?
No, I never did. I worked with a lot of people at Ladish that worked Kaszubes, but there was they always kept to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you talked about growing up in a tavern. Did you drink a lot later in your life, or?
Did I drink a lot?
Yeah.
No. When I attended a bar, I probably had a few beers in that, yeah.
Mm.
But hard liquor, I didn't.
Did you experience the Milwaukee roadways growing, the highways, the?
Yeah, I can remember. I remember when the first expressway was put into use. It was almost obsolete then. But yeah, I remember most of the streets had streetcars. They had the tracks, and that was kind of a neat thing. The conductor would drive the streetcar one way. He'd get to the end of the line. He would take his driving stuff out, put it on the other side, and just never turn around. Just keep going on the same tracks. It was kind of neat.
How much did it cost to go on one of these streetcars?
I think we paid a nickel or a dime. Well, speaking of that, when I lived on Finger Place, my brother and I would go to baseball games. The Brewers were a minor league team then. and they played way on 8th and Burleigh. And from where I lived, that was probably 20 miles. So it was either a nickel or a dime, and we had to transfer 3 times to get to the ball field. But we used to go a lot to the ball field. And the Brewers had some, I remember, that was a minor league team, so I remember when Mickey Mantle started out with Kansas City, he played at Borchard Field. Elvin Dark. There was a lot of good ball players played there.
Do you remember where you were during the race riots of 1967?
Yeah, I was, that was terrible. I lived in West Allis, and it was terrible. All the beer depots and stuff was all closed up. You couldn't buy beer or anything, you know. It was a tough time to get to work. If you were lucky enough to have a job, it was tough because one of the guys I worked with, his name was George Groppi, and his uncle was Father Groppi, and he was one of the instigators of these race riots. I shouldn't say instigator, he was involved in them. The guy had a lot of guts. I couldn't have done what he did. Yeah, he did he was instrumental in them.
So can you describe the atmosphere? Were you scared? Were you nervous?
Yeah,
How
I
did
was
you feel?
scared because, especially, I was glad I was out of Milwaukee then.
Yeah.
Because when they walked over the viaduct and they met, that's where the trouble was, you know. The Mexicans or Spanish people didn't get along with the colored people. And they had more fights than anybody, I think, you know. But, yeah, it was a tough time.
So you said you met Father Groppi's brother?
His nephew.
His nephew.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
I worked with him.
Yeah.
He was a metallurgical engineer at Ladish. And they had a big grocery store on the south side of Milwaukee. And in fact, it's still in business, Groppi's Food Store. That was a pretty good place.
Did you get to meet Father Groppi?
You know, I don't think I ever met him. I might have, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
So.
Did the nephew ever talk about his uncle?
Well, not really.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of kept hush-hush, you know. But the guy had a lot of, he was a good guy to do what he did, you know. It took, I don't know if I could have did what he did.
So on the topic of race, did you see any movement of like African Americans to your neighborhood, or did they stay mostly in inner Milwaukee?
Yeah, mostly in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were on a very small section of Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So we never had a problem. So.
Did you work with any African Americans?
At Ladish, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very nice people.
How many people were employed? How many African Americans were
boy,
employed?
That's hard to say. I really can't say. Maybe 50 or. We had at one time we had 8,000 working at Ladish and Cutting.
Yeah.
So there probably weren't too many African Americans then, but they were treated pretty well, I thought. They were in the supervisory, some of them, you know.
So, have you ever, let's see, have you ever driven a Harley before? Were you a motorcycle guy?
No. A Harley?
Yep.
I was on one ride one time, and that was it. I was not a motorcycle guy.
Did you ever go to the Eagles Club?
What club?
The Eagles Club?
Yeah, in fact, they used to have they called it was not a prom, but they called it it was a formal dance. The Lord's Ball, that's what it was. And that was at the Eagles Club.
Did you ever meet anyone famous there or anyone notable?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
Let's see. Did you ever go to Miller Parkway to see the Brewers play or Braves play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I used to go, well, when the Brewers, they built County Stadium in 1953, and then the Braves came about a month before the season started. They came from Boston to Milwaukee, and they had a fantastic team. You heard that story about the home run that was heard around the world? That was Bobby Thompson, who played for the Giants, the New York Giants. And he hit the home run to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers. They came from like 11 games out of first place to win the pennant. So Bobby Thompson was a hero. Well, Milwaukee Braves picked him up the following year, and he was supposed to play for us. But in spring training, he broke his leg. So that was the end of Bobby Thompson. But that was the start of Henry Aaron. The Braves brought him up from the minor leagues, and he was unbelievable. Just a skinny little kid, but he had a wrist. The home runs were all in a wrist. And never thought he would hit that many home runs. And then we also had another player, Eddie Matthews. Well, between the both of them, at one time, they each had over 500 home runs. That's a lot of home runs. Of course, Henry Aaron ended up with 755. But the Braves were a tremendous team. And we won the World Series in 1957. Should have won it in 56. We lost it on the last game of series. And in 58 we should have won it. We were beating the Yankees 3-1, and we blew it. But in 57 we won it. That was great. That was unbelievable. The crowds in Milwaukee were meeting them at the airplane when they got off, because they won it in New York. All the way to downtown Milwaukee. Crowds, it was unreal. People really, really loved them. They were a great team.
Did you get to meet any of the Braves or Brewers in person?
Yes. In fact, Johnny Logan was the outside shortstop. I got to meet him a lot of times. In fact, when I was coaching basketball and baseball, I coached 3 of his children. So I got to be good friends with him. Good ball player. Yeah, he was an all-star shortstop. I don't know if I ever met any of Felix Mantilla. I played ball with him. He was a utility second baseman and shortstop. Ernie Johnson. There was a lot of good. It was unreal, the team they had. Should have never left Milwaukee. Milwaukee, now of all the teams that were in baseball, Milwaukee was the first team to ever draw over 2 million fans. They did it 5 years in a row. Unbelievable. They really, really drew.
Did you ever go to the Mecca and watch any Bucks games?
Yeah. Before the Bucks were here, we had a team called the Milwaukee Hawks. Did you know about that?
Mm-mm.
No. Now they're the Atlanta Hawks. But yeah, they were a pretty good team. They left Milwaukee and they went to St. Louis, where they won a world championship. And Bob Pettit was one of the stars. He's a Hall of Famer. And then they moved, after a couple of years, they moved to Atlanta, the Atlanta Hawks, which are still in existence today. And the Milwaukee Braves went to Atlanta also. And now they're the Atlanta Braves. But yeah, it was fun growing up. And then in 1969, we got the Milwaukee Bucks. And Lou Alcindor, who is now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Do you know how we got him in a trade? Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks were tied for the worst record in basketball. So we had a coin flip between Milwaukee and Phoenix. We won the coin flip and we got Jabbar. Unbelievable. To me, he was the best player of all time. The guy could shoot, and it was unbelievable. And they won their first championship in 1971. Larry Costello was their coach. I got to be pretty good friends with Larry Costello. And then they got Oscar Robinson. You heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
The Big O. He was probably one of the all-time best. Johnny McLaughlin was a guard for us. He was a good player. Bobby Dandridge. A lot of good players. How I got to meet Larry Costello, I was coaching basketball for the Knights of Columbus, and we used to have a tournament at the Sacred Heart Monastery. And then after the tournament, we would have a dinner for the players, the championship teams and all the players. And we got Larry Costello as a speaker, and he was fantastic. He spoke for over an hour. Unbelievable. So I talked to him there, and then I used to meet him at a lot of Braves ball games. He would sit right where I was sitting and got to talk to him quite a bit. In fact, after he left the Bucks, he got a job at Ithaca College in New York. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that, but he was coaching against Marquette University. And I went in there and I met him. I talked to him right at the game. Very nice fellow. In fact, I think he's passed away now, but I think he still holds the record for consecutive free throws made. He was a good ball player.
We're going to start wrapping up, but we have like 3 questions left. So when the Brewers, or when the Braves left and the Brewers came, how did people feel about it?
Well, they were kind of teed off because '66 was their last year in Milwaukee. And they gave a couple other cities teams and never considered Milwaukee. So we had a car dealership owner by the name of Bud Seeley. And he was very instrumental in getting a new ball club here. The ball club we got in 1970 was the Seattle Pilots, and we got them here in Milwaukee. And we named them the Brewers, Milwaukee Brewers.
So is there any more stories you'd like to tell us, or?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you one story about my baseball experience. Years ago, they would have a all-star game at County Stadium. And you'd have to try out for the team and get picked for it. And Bunny Brief ran the south side, Jack Closer ran the north side. I was lucky enough to make the team. And what you did, you played a game, and then they would pick an all-star, the best player, and he would go to New York, and this all-star team would play against the New York team. That was very interesting. And during the game, we were playing, the Braves were playing, the Brewers were playing the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they sat in the dugout with us during the game. That was very nice, very exciting. And you know how the Brewers, the Brewers, there was always 39,000, 40,000. So I played between 39,000 and 40,000 people. That was unbelievable. And then also, they used to have a all-world semi-pro tournament. They would get teams from all over. And to make that semi-pro game, you had to be in first place, whatever league you were in, you know. And I was lucky enough to make 3 or 4 of them teams. That was very nice to play County Stadium.
All right, so before we finish up, our last question is, what advice would you like to give to future generations?
To who?
To future generations.
Well, just stay calm and cool, and let's respect each other. Let's get rid of the guns. The guns are good for the Army, but for nobody else. Let's get along with everybody and make it a better world. I hope that happens.
All right. Thank you, Grandpa Gerry, for being here.
Thank you.
And for allowing us to interview you.
Thank you very much for having me.